In this service video we have a portable Suzuki 4-stroke engine. This engine is the DF5A, but in this video it covers the DF4A, the 5A and the 6A from 2017 onwards. So I've got the service box here. It comes with everything you need to service the engine for a DF4, 5 and 6A from 2017 onwards. Like I say, it comes with everything you need apart from the oils. So inside the box, everything's in here. So we've got an oil filter, an impeller, fuel filter, an anode, another anode. There's two anodes on this engine, one on the leg and one on the block. Water pump components, just a bag, spark plug, gaskets, woodruff key for the impeller, water pump plate, another part of the water pump, an O-ring for the water pump, a gasket for the sump pan, cotter pin, and some gaskets for the gearbox. So one thing I like about the Suzuki engines, they do come with service kits. There's a few of the manufacturers do it, but a lot of them you just have to buy them sort of loose. Now these come as a kit, pre-assembled, and it's ideal for your engine because you've got everything you need in one place. So we'll just have a quick overview of this engine. Let's say it's one of the portable engines, Impeller recoil start. Gear selector, you've got neutral, forward and reverse just on the side here. This engine has an internal fuel tank on top, but as you can see here you have the option for an external connection, which is here, so you can have an external long run tank, and all you do is you just turn this control lever here to the right, which turns off the fuel to the tank and allows you to use an external fuel supply. So just around the other side of the engine we have the choke and the position for the kill cord. So you've got the recoil starter and the tiller handle here, which the throttle is on the tiller, and there's like a friction control there for the tiller, for the throttle handle. So taking the lid off, it's just a clip at the front and the back. So we take them off and we should be able to just lift the cowling straight off. Just put that there. And inside we can see we've got the fuel tank, the carburetor, the intake, we've got the plug for the oil, we've got a little oil level window there I believe. Coming around to the side here, the fuel pump, a fuel filter, obviously the recoil starter on top. A little bit of information about the engine oil, valve clearances, and the spark plug just on there. Working down the engine, obviously we've got the leg here. It's a manual trim and tilt. The prop on the bottom there. We've got the anode and the fill and drain for the gear oil. And inside this section here we've got the impeller. So quite a small engine, very light, quite a bit of power for its size. And let's say we'll get started and we'll do a full service on it. I think I said in the walk around that was the oil level. I don't think that is the oil level, because obviously that's the filler there and the dipsticks on the bottom of the filler. And I'll just take that out there and I'll show you. There's the dipstick. I think it's just like an indication to see sort of lubricating oil or anything like that. And underneath we've got the telltale outlet, and we also have the drain for the engine oil there on the left. So we'll be taking that off, and like I say, we've got a new O-ring for that, the copper gasket. We'll change that as well. So we'll do the fuel system, which is just this filter here on the left as it comes in. There's a clip at the front and back. We'll squeeze them off and slide them forward and back, and then we'll be able to remove this fuel filter, bearing in mind that there is a flow indication arrow. Obviously the fuel's coming this way into the pump, and we want the arrow pointing in the direction of the fuel flow. So I'll get some pliers, we'll pop them off and replace that. So I've got the new filter here, 44330-13H00, and this is a genuine Suzuki like for like fuel filter. So we'll just get in here and we'll squeeze these clips together, and we can slide them, that one forward. Might have to just move that out the way, that seal. See if I can get onto that one. A little bit rusty, that one. And just a bit of an angle on that one. Slide that one back. We should be able to just twist and pull. Twist and pull. And now this hose is straight. Should be able to just squeeze this one a little bit better. There we go, push that back. And then twist and pull, and that's the fuel filter off. It was in the right orientation, so we can go ahead and get the new one here. And making sure the arrow is facing the right way, we can just push this on and slide this clip forward. Puts that one on. Push the other hose on, and again slide the clip back over that end. Just put that seal back on, and we'll just show you there. That's it, fitted. You can see the arrow on top there facing that direction, and that's the fuel filter. So we're going to do the oil on this engine now. This engine holds 0.7 litres of oil. Put the oil grades on the back there, a 10W30 or a 10W40, API readings, oil capacity, say 0.7, and we'll drain it. I've got a pan down there, and there's a drain just up there under the engine. So we'll drain that oil down, and this engine also has an oil filter, which is a little bit different. It's not a can as usual, this one is a cartridge that goes in, so we'll be changing that as well. And that oil filter cartridge goes on the left hand side, just in front of the fuel pump here. It's held on with two 10mm bolts. You can get this one here with a socket, but this one here, I recommend removing this fuel line on the output side of the fuel pump. Just spring clip again, push that forward, slide the hose off, and then you'll be able to, not that you can't get to that bolt there, it's just for taking the lid off. Just gives you that extra clearance. So we'll go ahead and we'll do the oil change now. So I'll just show you getting to that oil filter. So take that spring clip off, and we can pull that hose out the way. Just lift that up there. Now we can get our ratchet on there and undo these bolts. Let's say for the one on the left, I just use a socket because it's a little profile there's a little bit close. So I'll just take these bolts out. So whoever did this last, the bolts weren't exactly very tight. So now we should just be able to lift this lid. It looks like they might have stuck it down with something. I might have to, a little bit of a lip on the right hand side there that we can lift. So we've got the lid there. Like I say, inside there, that's just the cartridge that sits inside. And there is still oil in there, so probably best to have drained the oil first, but I've got the lid off, so we'll drain the oil from the actual sump now. Hopefully that level will drop. I'm not sure whether it will or not. If not, we'll just take that out, but we'll drain the oil and then we'll take that off. So for the oil pan, I've got a size 8 Allen key head, and we're just going to go into this bolt just in there, and hopefully that will miss all the engine and go straight into the waste oil pan there. Guarantee you that it's going to hit something on the engine on the way down. It always does, but hopefully it'll avoid everything. The only thing it might catch is just this tension screw. I might even try and move that, put it in line just to alleviate anything. So I'll crack that open now, and we'll drain that 0.7 litres of engine oil into that pan there. So hopefully you can see this on the camera. I'm just going to put that in there, get it nicely seated, give it a few taps, making sure the pan is still directly underneath, and trying not to get our fingers covered in oil, which is easier said than done. I think I'm just about on the last thread. Let's have a look here. Yep, that's the last thread, and oh, it's just me being a bit silly there. Could have just moved the power head. I forgot that the power head and the lower unit are independent. But anyway, it's still touching that ventilation plate there. So I'll leave that to drain, and we'll check on the oil filter itself whether that level's going down. And it doesn't appear to be going down, so I suspect there's some sort of check valve in there. But like I say, we'll leave that to drain down. It can take as long as it wants to drain. I'll get some rags, cover that up, and we'll lift the that cartridge out. And I've got the new one to go in, and then it'll be a case of putting that plug back in the sump with a new gasket, and then we'll refill the oil level with 0.7 litres of oil. So for getting that out, I'm just going to use these pliers here, long nose pliers, and we'll just get a hold of it, try and keep as much oil in there as we can, and quickly remove it, and we'll just drop it straight into there. Yes, it is. There's not actually that much oil in there. I think it's just with the cartridge, and it just brings the level right up. So for replacement now, we've got I'll show you, we've got the new oil filter here, and it's a 16510-16H11. Here's the cartridge. So that's on top, and underneath you've got a little O-ring there, and it does say this side to engine written on it, so it's going to sit like that. And one other thing we have this O-ring which goes on the lid, 09280-39002, and we also have that O-ring in here somewhere, if I can find it. Yep, there we go. That's for the sump plug itself, and that's 09168-12017. So a few bits. Let's say, so we'll put the new cartridge in now, take the old O-ring off, put the new O-ring on, clean the faces, put the lid back on, put the sump plug in with the new O-ring, and then we shall measure out 0.7 litres of oil and refill it, and the filter's just there. One thing I'll say is, I know it's really obvious to most people here, but there is like a cellophane wrap that goes around the this membrane. Make sure you take that off, and don't pull that stopper out. That's the seal for the bottom, which separates the sort of the clean oil from the old oil, and that just goes straight in there, and give it a firm push down to seat it and locate it. And that's it. So we've just got this O-ring to change on there, so there's just a case of just picking the old one off. We've got a new one there that we can just stretch back over. There we go. And put a bit of oil around there just to lubricate it. And now we're ready to put the lid back on. It's got a spring there just to keep the pressure on. Push that over there, 2 bolts, and we're back on. So that's the oil filter replaced, the O-ring and the lid back on. Now we've just got to put this fuel line back on and the connection, put the sump plug back in, got the new washer on there, and do the oil. Okay, so I've got 700 millilitres of oil there, and I've taken the dipstick plug out. Now I've got a funnel, hopefully we can just sort of wedge that in there, and then we can pour the oil in. Okay, so I put the 700 millilitres of oil in. I've checked it on the level. So on this Suzuki 5 horsepower, we're now going to do the Impeller, which requires the removal of the gearbox. To do this, we need to undo this cover here, which is just like a rubber cover, which gives us access to the shift rod linkage. We'll undo the shift rod linkage, and then we've got 2 bolts underneath, and we should be able to withdraw the lower unit with the drive shaft. So I'll just show you that now. Uncovering this cover, just slip a blade in there, and we can rotate that out the way, and you can see there we have the connection between the sort of the control arm here, and then it steps back for the gearbox side. So we'll split that linkage, which means this rod here can come down with this gearbox. Like I say, we've got a bolt there and a bolt there, and we can take the gearbox out, and the impeller is in sort of this section here connected to the lower unit, which is powered by the drive shaft connected to the engine. So we'll get that out. It looks like it could be a 10mm on there, and then underneath are two M12s. So with the engine in neutral, we get good access in between there. So we get the 10mm on, and we just slacken that off. We don't have to fully undo it, so the two halves come apart, just enough so that when we take hold of it, we can slide it up and down, because it is retained, held captive on the engine side by like a little fused washer there. And now, because that's loose, when we select the drive, it doesn't actually drive the other part of the engine, the gearbox end. So M12 now, or 12mm socket, and I'll undo the two bolts underneath. Just see that one there and the one at the back, and then it'll allow us to drop the gearbox. So we'll just start undoing these 12mm. Get that back one started off, and then this front one here. You can remove the propeller before this, but I'm just going to keep it on for now. These small ones are quite an easy engine to do, but the larger engines, which I've done quite a few videos on as well, removing gearboxes, that's quite a trick to it, because they are heavy, and all of a sudden the power head will be fused to the drive shaft, and then all of a sudden it lets go and the whole thing wants to come out. But these ones, they're so light that there's no real issue here. I normally back these bolts off and then just give it a tap around, just so you get a crack forming between the two surfaces, so you know that it's going to come off evenly and not just fly off. But like I say, these small ones, they're not too bad, and those bolts are ready now, so I'll just take these fully out now. Okay, so that's the second one out, and now we're ready to drop the gearbox. So we might have to tilt the engine up, because obviously the drive shaft is the full length of the engine, so we'll lift the engine up and then we'll be able to pull out the drive shaft. So just tilted the engine up enough to be able to get it out, and some light taps so we can draw the entire shaft down without any problem at all. And the condition inside, it's pretty much immaculate. So we'll get this mounted in a bench now, and we'll be able to tackle this water pump on top. Okay, so I've got the gearbox mounted in the workbench here. This here is the impeller housing, the shift rod linkage, and that's the output side of the water pump. And this here is the drive shaft with a spline top. The housing itself is held on with 4 10mm bolts, or screw heads, whatever they are. And if you look inside of here, you can see the water pickup tube. In these newer engines, they're actually really good, because the pickup tubes are actually fixed position. The older ones, it was just like a tube that would flap around, and trying to get it back into there, absolute nightmare. Now, a tip to do with these, which is almost a benefit of taking the prop off, that don't change the position, or try not to change the position of this spline. Not that it's the worst thing in the world, because it's not the end of the world, but when you're trying to realign it, these engines aren't too bad, but the bigger ones, it is a bit of a nightmare, because you're trying to realign the spline, which, if you've moved the position, as in you've dropped it into gear for whatever reason and you've turned the prop, this spline misaligns, and it does take some getting, even though it is a fine spline, and you can see that, but trying to get them realigned, it can be a bit of a pain, especially if you've got dried grease or any burrs on there. But just try and keep everything without moving it. And like I say, now we'll just take off these 4 10mm, I think they're bolts, well they could just be nuts on top, I'm not sure till we take them off, and then we'll be able to see the inside and replace the water pump components. So we've just removed the 4 nuts there. They were nuts with washers, so they're off, and now we are able to remove the impeller housing. So we'll just lift that up nice and slowly, It looks like it's taken the impeller with it. The key, woodruff key, you can see there has been left behind. So we're coming up. I've got my finger underneath just to keep anything from coming off. There we go. We can turn it over and have a look. And that impeller, yeah, it's in good condition. The kit comes with everything apart from this outer housing, so we can go ahead and replace everything now. I think we do have this lower plate as well, if I remember. So we've got the lower plate, the inner, the impeller, the key. There's a gasket that goes under there as well. So it's pretty much everything that's left in that box there, because we've done everything else. If you haven't seen the other videos, we'll go ahead now, put that to one side. We'll lift this plate off. Just bearing in mind the orientation of these holes in this intake here. We don't want to put it on the wrong way. Not that you can with this one because of the it's like a crescent moon, but you could potentially have it flipped over. So just, if you're doing it yourself, just take some pictures and you can't go far wrong. Same with that, just take a few pictures. So I've taken that plate off, and there's a gasket underneath which is also connected to this front plate, which just slips over there, and that just retains the seal for this the shift rod linkage. So when I took it off, it looks like it's been stuck on real tight, and then it's just ripped it across the face there. So another 10mm bolt there, and that back plate slides out. It's not part of this plate, it's two separate pieces. Underneath there's a bit of a gasket. It looks like they've used some sort of glue to stick it down. So I've got a razor blade. The face itself, very clean. So put the new gasket on, put that back on top, and then we can replace everything else, because there's the new gasket. See, it's one continuous piece. In theory they probably could have done it in two pieces. I don't know if that, yeah, maybe it's not in two pieces, but yeah. So we'll clean that up, gasket down, new air plate, and then we can tackle the internals of the water pump. Right, so that's it all cleaned up. I've got this new gasket, just bearing in mind the orientation it goes on. So if you look at mine as it goes on, that's how it should sit, just like that. And we've got this collar which slips over the top and sits sort of under that gaiter, just there. It actually seats into like a recess which must hold the lip seal. So that's that one there, and then we can just go ahead and refit that bolt in there. So I'll tighten that down. That's that section done. Like I say, then we can do the water pump itself. I don't know if I mentioned it, but that gasket there, the part number is 17472-91J00-000. And we have the new water pump wear plate, which is 17471-98610-000. We'll go ahead, I'll get that out of the bag, slide it over the shaft and just replace it as it was. There we go, that's the wear plate bottom on. And now it's time to do the impeller. So for this impeller, we just need to get this inner ring out. So from the top, just get a screwdriver and we just sort of tap it out, going all the way around, and it should eventually just come out. We're not trying to damage this case. So what we can do, we can just take the impeller out just to help us. Like I say, just from the inside there, just tap it out. Sometimes you can get it from the inside, but I find it easier because you can't see it from the top there. Just tap it all the way out. So eventually got it out. Whoever put it in at last actually glued it in, which wasn't very helpful. It's actually two pieces. You've got like this ring and then a top plate. So just these three pieces and this. Obviously we've got the key that goes in. So we'll go ahead, put this back in first, and then put that plate on top. So just drop that ring in there. If you can see the position, there's a hole on the left. It goes into that sort of wider area. On the other side of that disc, it has like a, I don't know, almost like an outlet. So it'll only go in one way. Otherwise you'll have a protrusion on this inner side. and the part number for that was 17412-91JLO. And then we have this sealing ring on the inside, like a wear ring, and that is part number 17413-91JLO. And that just sits on the outer ring where that sort of glue is. So let's have a look at the installation. So we'll just have a look at the installation of this ring here, because it will only go in really one way. So you've got that, so the outlet side here. Underneath you have these tabs, and there's a split, and there's like a sort of a locating dowel. So with the smooth side on top, which will be touching this upper gasket, we want to just sort of align that there. So that indication dowel is sitting in there. I think it'll only go in one way. And then those tabs underneath will then lock into the metal plate inside as well. So you're sort of looking at it in that position, if that makes sense. I don't know why they've used glue, I'm not sure on that. Whether this housing's a bit worn out, I don't know why they've glued it in, but whatever reason they have. So I'll press that in, and then we can do the impeller and the key. So that's it pressed in. I just hammered it with a soft face mallet, and it's now flush. So that's how it should look. It's a little bit confusing if you've never done one before, but that's it. You can see that sort of indication dowel in this corner here. So that's the housing. Okay, so we're back at the gearbox now with that completed housing. I've got the impeller to go in. Impeller number is 17461-985MO-000. Got a new woodruff key. Surprisingly, it doesn't actually have a part number, it's just a blank bag. Got the old one there. It's not a good idea to reuse woodruff keys because you don't know if the profile's been altered at all with the use, so it could slip. So if you get a new one, always use a new one. So what I like to do, I like to put the woodruff key in. Just goes in that slot there on the side, and then I like to slide the impeller down and then push the housing over. Some people put the impeller in the housing and try and push the whole lot out. I just don't like doing it that way. I like to just turn the impeller housing a little bit over the top of the impeller. It's a brand new impeller, it'll seat perfectly fine. If you were using an old one for whatever reason, then it's a little bit more tricky because you can damage the blades, but this is brand new, completely pliable. So that's just the way I do it. So hopefully you can see from that angle. Got the woodruff key, new one, which is just here in my hand. We'll slot that into the corresponding cutout there on the shaft. As you can see on this impeller, you can't slide it down that way because it's covered. You can only slide it in that way. It has a double slot, obviously different engines. Some of them have like a pin that runs through. It doesn't matter which way, if it's top one or bottom one. It's a brand new impeller. So we'll slide the impeller down, keeping a note of which vein has the notch cut out of it, and we can try and align this as best we can. So there we go, I've just pressed it over, just lift it up, and you can see the woodruff key there. Sometimes you need to squeeze them onto the shaft a little bit because it is a very tight fit. In the process I did move the shaft a little bit, but that's not the end of the world. Now you can take the housing, and it goes on in one way, that direction. So now as we come down, what I like to do is I like to rotate the shaft a little bit, and that sort of twists the impeller into that housing. So I'll just show you there, like that. Now we can put the washers back on, the nuts, tighten it all up, and it's ready to go back into the engine. So it's a good idea before you put this back in just to put some anti-seize on these bolts. not too much, just a light coating, and then the same on the spline. So I've actually had an engine before where the spline was seized to the power head. We couldn't actually get the gearbox off, so we can now realign this. This being a small engine, very easy to do. If the spline doesn't align, you just pull it back and just give a slight twist to the drive shaft, or you can even rotate the flywheel just a little bit. I mean, you're talking a 1/16th of a turn, if that. It's a very minute turn, and it'll go in. And obviously just the 2 bolts, and then making sure as it goes in that this selector rod goes through the actual clamp. Otherwise you'll have to take it back out. So that's the main thing, just make sure the selector clamp goes round that as you go in, and then the power head that's sort of the last thing to go in, because that's when it's flush. And like I say, the pickup tube, that's affixed to the sort of the lower end of the engine, so that'll go in automatically. As it goes in, there is like a locating dowel that this runs through, like so it goes in straight. And we're just going through, I don't know if you can see it, I'm going to do it one-handed here, but the selector's going through that rod, and that's going to come out through the top. If everything aligns, once it aligns, the casing will come flush, and that's how you know it's aligned. So we just got the last few mil to go there, and that's it, aligned on the dowel. Just check that the propeller is in neutral still, and we haven't compressed this rod, and we're in neutral at the top, which we are. So now what we can do, we can put both bolts in, and then we can nip this up at the end once we confirm again that it's in neutral. So that was removing the gearbox and changing the impeller. If you've got any questions about that, just leave a comment and I'll be sure to answer it. It's quite hard to do it sort of one-handed, filming it, doing it by yourself, but everything should go together, how it came apart, all flush. Make sure you're in neutral, and this is in neutral, and you can check, you know, going into forward, which it is, back to neutral, and then reverse, and then back to neutral. That's like your main check afterwards. As long as everything's connected and it goes into gear and comes out, then you know you haven't made any adjustments. So that's it. It's a little bit more complicated with that sort of impeller assembly, but it's pretty straightforward. So if you watch the video, shouldn't go too far wrong. If you've got any questions, be sure just to ask. So the spark plug on this engine is a single cylinder, so it's got one spark plug, and it's in here. We'll just take that boot off, and that's the spark plug in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove that. We'll also do a compression test on this engine, and I've got the new spark plug here. There's a part number 09482 00L04. Taking it out there, it's an NGKR CPR6EA9, and it's gapped between 0.8 and 0.9. I've got my feeler gauges here, and that's a 0.8mm or 0.032 in imperial. So that one's ready to go in once we have removed the old one. We'll look at the condition of the tip and we'll do a compression test. So I've got the socket here for the spark plug. This is a 10mm spark plug socket. So we're taking the boot off just in case of putting it on the back here, and we can undo it. It's quite tight, that one, but it's coming off. Spark plug removed. A little bit white on the tip. I don't know if it's been getting a little bit hot. I'll check the gap on it now and just see what that one's been set at, because it does say 0.8 to 0.9 in the book. Yeah, 0.8 goes in no problem. Could be a little bit bigger, could be like 8.5, something like that. So like I say now, this is, we'll just check it's the correct, it's the same one we just removed. And as you can see on these spark plugs, they don't have the big like terminal top, they've got like a threaded end. I think it's just like a push fit. So say now we'll get the compression tester out, do a compression, probably looking at 120, 130, something like that. But if I can fit it in, that is, it is quite a thin thread. Yep, so here's my compression tester here, the end of it, and I've got an adapter which steps it down to that size of thread, that spark plug. So just put that on there. I'll show you around here. As you can see in there, there's the hole in there. So we'll thread this compression tester in, and then I'll give it a few pulls, and we'll see the PSI. So that's the compression tester fitted, and I've come around the other side. The kill cord's off. We've set the throttle to full throttle, so the butterfly valve in the carburetor is fully open for maximum airflow, and it's just a case now of giving it a few pulls just to build the pressure up on the gauge. So just trying to set the recoil starter to the minimum. I don't think I can, so give that a few pulls, and we'll see where we're at on the gauge. Just shy of 100, around about 100, but I mean, I'm not getting a proper seal on there very well because there's quite a few steps on that gauge, so we'll give it a few more pulls, set to full throttle. Haven't really got the best pull. I'll try and get around here, maybe a bit better. That's better. But what we've got to remember is as well, the engine is cold, so the rings and the valves might not be seating too good. But yeah, we're getting 105. So we are getting compression, so we'll give it a run when we're finished, and if it runs fine, it runs fine. Once it's been run, like I say, the compression will come up just with the temperature. But being a very cold morning, we've got about 105. Hoping for about 120, but we're not too far off that. So we'll take the compression tester out now, and we'll fit the new spark plug. Okay, so new spark plug, it's already gapped. The ratchet on, just nip it up. That last few, probably half turn. And now we can get the boot back on, just making sure that we don't trap any other cables in the process. And we'll just push that on. That's it, nice firm fit. Just replace any cables that I might have moved in the process. There we go. That's it in there, that's the boot back on. So changing the spark plug on this, very straightforward, very accessible. You only need one tool. Like I say, you don't have to do a compression test. But I'm just getting an overall health of the engine. So the next bit we're going to do is the thermostat and the anode within the block. Now the thermostat and anode are together, and it's on the left hand side of the engine. So you've got the fuel pump and the fuel pump outlet, and then there's a little black sort of, looks like a big button with two 10mm bolts to remove. And this is where the thermostat, and behind the thermostat is the anode, which is in the block, and then the other anode is down on the leg. So we'll go ahead, remove those two, take the anode, take the thermostat out, we'll test the thermostat, and we'll replace the anode within. Okay, so I've got my 10mm socket, and I'm going to just undo these bolts. So there's just two of them. We'll take them out. There we go. So on the inside of there, it's just the cover. And we have the, if you can see that now, we've got the thermostat. So I'll just pull that out. Good condition. And then inside behind there, held in with a Phillips headed bolt, there is the anode. So use a screwdriver, just like that. And we'll put that in, we'll remove that. We'll check the condition, and we've got the new one, and we'll replace that. And like I say, we'll test the thermostat as well. There's no seal that goes on there. It's purely sealed by this ring sealing ring on the thermostat. So I'll take that anode out now and we'll have a look at it. So I've just taken it out and it's not looking in too bad condition. We've got a new one, so we'll replace it, but in a pinch I'll be quite happy putting that one back in. Hardly any wastage on it, but like I say, we've got a new one. And looking at the condition of the one on the leg, that's pretty good condition as well. But let's say, because we've got new ones in the kit, we will change them. And now we'll go and do the thermostat. So just put some water on, hot water on top of that thermostat, and you can see there that the piston inside has retracted, which means that this thermostat is working. And when it cools down, that will then close again and seal. So I've allowed it to cool down, and that piston inside has now closed. Some thermostats, the piston comes up and out, but this one retracts down. So as you can see there, it's fully sealed. So that's good to go back in the engine now, along with the new anode. So I've got the new internal anode. It's a 55321-95J00. As I said, we'll take that out, put the bolt through it, and then put it back in the way we took it off. And then we've got the lower anode, which is exactly the same. That's just that's held on with a bolt as well. I'm not sure the size, looks like an M8. And this is the one here, which is a 55321-87J01. I'm not going to show you the lower one doing it because it's you can't really go wrong doing it. It's that bolt there. You just take it off, put it back on. But like I say, if I'm putting this back in, anode goes in first, and then your thermostat, and then thermostat cover. There's no gasket. The gasket is already on the thermostat there. So if that was damaged, probably able to get a separate O-ring for it, I'd imagine. I wouldn't thought you'd have to buy the entire thermostat. So I'll put that all back together, and that'll be the thermostat housing and anodes done. So that's them both done there. That one down there was an 8mm socket requirement. So that's them done. So on this Suzuki DF5, we're going to do the gearbox oil now. Quite straightforward. Top plug, lower plug down there. Check the top plug first, which we can undo, and the bottom one. Push this tray out of the way. There we go. Always important, like I always say, that you can do the top one first. Always undo this top one, because you fill it from the bottom. If you can't get this top one out, you can never refill it because you can't purge the air out. So now we've got the top one out, we can just go ahead and remove the bottom one. We'll drain it down, do a compression test on the gearbox, and then we'll refill it with gear oil. So as that oil's drained out, we're just looking at the colour of it, the smell of it. That gear oil looks perfect, no indication of water or moisture in there. It looks fairly new, it's not got a smell to it, like a sulphur smell or anything. So let that drain down, very small gearbox just in here, and then we'll get the pressure tester on it. I've got some new seals for the plugs, and then can refill it as well. So I've just fitted the compression tester on here. I'll do vacuum and pressure for up to about 10 psi, and we'll see if that holds. Going for about 30 seconds to a minute, not dropping any pressure, and I'll make sure all the lip seals holding in the oil and holding out the water are functioning correctly. I've got no reason to think otherwise because the oil's in good condition and the engine's in good condition. But I'll run those pressures now and I'll show you once it's done. So there we are, that's it pumped up. See there, it's 10 psi, and I'll hold that, say a minute, and then we'll put it under vacuum, same again, 10 psi, and then we can do the gearbox oil, refill it. And again, there it is, I've got it at minus 10 psi under vacuum, and it's held really well, hasn't dropped any psi at all. So we'll take that off, refill the oil, and then put both plugs back in. So I've got the bottle connected now, and it's just a case of pumping the oil up, filling it from the bottom to the top to purge the oil. Once the oil comes at the top, we can put the top plug in, remove the filler, put the bottom plug in, and we're all set. If you can see that, that's the oil just starting to come out there now. So top plug in, nipped up, and we can undo this bottom one here, as you can see, because it creates like a vacuum. I don't think any oil came out there. It's quite thick, this oil. And snug that down, and then just double check the top one. And that's how you change the gearbox oil on a Suzuki DF4, 5 and 6A. So the last thing we're going to do, we're just going to have a look at the propeller shaft. So we'll just take this cotter pin out, we'll just squeeze the ends together, try and bend them back together, and on this end we can pull it out. We'll not be reusing that, we've got a new one, and we just need to take this end cap off. Which comes off quite easily, and then the shaft, the prop comes off. Very clean inside. Washer, thrust washers, a little bit of sand in there. Spline shaft, plenty clean grease on there. So what we'll do is we'll clean all that grease off, have a look, see if there's any contamination on the lip seals, apply some new grease, prop back on the end cap nut, and then I've got a new split pin which we can fit, and then just bend the ends over, and that's it done. So there we go, that's the split pin. Push that through, then we can turn the prop over onto its side, get some pliers, and we just bend the end over just so the pin doesn't come back out, and that retains the prop sort of nut on, stopping the prop from coming off. So that's it done there. It's quite simple, easy to do that. Okay, now, so I've got the engine in the tank and it's time for a test run. So made sure the vent's open. There is a little filter inside there, like a screen, cleaned that out. The fuel, turn that to the right, sets it to the internal tank. It's in neutral, kill cord's attached, choke is in, set a little bit to cranking speed, and it's time to give it a pull. Oh, might need two hands for this. And there we go. Very light engine pull. Good water coming out, coolant. Didn't need any choke. Sounds really healthy. A little bit of shaking, but I think that's just because of how it's mounted. See that little window there? You just see oil splashing around inside. So I think it's just an indication that you've got oil flow. I think we'll have to check the manual for that. Just give it a bit of throttle. That's sounding really healthy. Haven't got any oil leaks or fuel leaks on the lines that we've taken off. It's all looking really good. So we'll put the cover on and I'll give it another run, and that should be pretty good. We'll just test the stop there, and that's working well. You can push it in, or when that's attached to you, see it's on a little armband there, that'll kill the engine. But overall, very good condition engine. Hardly any, if any, corrosion that I've noticed. Paint, immaculate. So this engine I think is very reliable, and as you can hear from it running, it started first time. There is there's a little Welsh plug there. I don't know if that's the manufacture date. It's got 2018. I think that's an 811170 Feb, so it could be a February 2018 engine, possibly. I mean, they did make the run start from 2017 onwards, so that concludes the service for the Suzuki DF5. Like I say, this is also the same for the DF4, 5 and 6A. So any comments, questions, please leave them below. Leave a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.